Hello, chat. I'm only late by like an hour and a half from the designated time. I was supposed to go live an hour and a half ago, but here we are. I passed out. Look, I went to bed at like 5 a.m. or something. All right. Where's the game? There it is. All right. So, let me double check. What were we doing last stream? First of all, I got sleep. In-game. Hello, Doge. I gotta go get food? Okay, goodbye, Doge. Right, so last time we established that, I assume that we did loop-de-loop. And we now have conundrum of we gotta place down the thing. But there are no cacti here. That's a problem. I need some junk that I can use to mark down the map where we've been. How about this AK? We'll put this down over here. Alright. That's good enough. By reading today, more Windows internals. Last time we left off on the Affinity chapter, the Threads chapter, at the Affinity section. So we're gonna continue doing that. I can't see shit. Alright. Right, Affinity. Each thread has an affinity mask that specifies the processors on which the thread is allowed to run. The thread affinity mask is inherited from the process affinity mask. By default, all processes and therefore all threads begins with an affinity mask that is equal to the set of all active processors on their assigned group. In other words, the system is free to schedule all threads on any available processors within the groups associated with the process. However, to optimize the throughput, partition workloads to a specific set of processors, or both, applications can choose to change the affinity mask for a thread. This can be done at several levels. First, by calling the setThreadAffinityMask function to set the affinity for an individual thread, or by calling the setProcessAffinityMask function to set the affinity for all threads in a process. Or, Task Manager and Process Explorer provide a GUI to this function. To access it, right-click a process and choose Set Affinity. In addition, the PSExec tool from sysinternals provides a command line interface to this function. See the -A switch. Or by making a process a member of a job as a job-wide affinity mask using the setInformationJobObject function, described earlier in Chapter 3. Or by specifying an affinity mask in the image header when compiling the application. Tip: for detailed specification for the Windows image format, search for PE and common object file specification at MSDN. That no longer goes anywhere. I find it funny that the documentation on the Microsoft website, the subdomain has been it keeps changing year by year. It went from msdn.microsoft.com for like well over a few decades to docs.microsoft.com in like the early 2020s, and now it's learn.microsoft.com. I don't know why they keep changing it. All right, another branch. That's a problem. Because we still don't have junk that we can put down. We got any junk in the back? I don't think so. Oh, oh. No, don't do that. Testing oil. The natural thing to do in the car. Well, how about we lose the bumper instead? I mean, that's optional, right? Now it looks tedious. Whatever. I'm sure we'll find another bumper somewhere else. Right. An image can also have the uniprocessor flag set at link time. If this flag is set, the system chooses a single processor at process creation time with the rotating processing number API, and assigns that as the process affinity mask, starting with the first processor and then going round robin across all the processors within the group. For example, on a dual processor system, the first time an image marked with the uniprocessor flag is launched, it is assigned to CPU 0. The second time, CPU 1. The third time, CPU 0. The fourth time, CPU 1, and so on. This flag can be useful as a temporary workaround for programs that have multi-threaded synchronization bugs that surface on multiprocessor systems due to race conditions, but not on a uniprocessor system. If an image exhibits such symptoms and is unsigned, you can add the flag manually by editing the image header with a p-image editing tool. A better solution, also compatible with signed executable, is to use the Microsoft Application Compatibility Toolkit. The game just lagged for a little bit. That means something loaded on the left. Got a bus. And add a shim to force the compatibility database to mark the image as uniprocessor only at launch time. Alright, let's see what's over here. We got a whole car up there. A tire. I guess we'll collect some more trash. Right? So we got more stuff to drop off of. I feel like the game is actually running a little bit better now compared to before. Now that we figure out the performance issues, I'll solve it. There's gas. That's oil. You know. Oh. I planned on having breakfast before stream every time on a Saturday when I have a stream. I always fail to do that because I always wake up too late. And, you know, by the time I wake up, I'm like, okay, I have to get ready for stream because I slept in. Oops. No breakfast for me. And, yep, here we are. It's currently 12:47 over here. There's performance issues. I mean, there has always been performance issues whenever I'm streaming. I'm kind of resolved that. Well, kind of. At least it doesn't feel like it's lagging anymore. Ooh, that's a pristine looking car. Hang on. I don't think it's better than what we have. Oh, it needs cooling as well. Oh, that's a no-go. I'll try it anyways. It's complaining about battery. The game doesn't have battery yet. I don't know what's... Okay, whatever. You think I'm gonna drive this bus? How do I open this again? Well, either way, it's missing wheels. So, unless we can come up with 8 wheels. I mean, we can technically. But I'm good. Sure, the BO engine you have can support the weight of the bus, surely. The fuck? Is it because of the window? Alright, time to collect more junk. Why is he holding the BB bullets like that? She? Whatever. This is one. I don't know. How is it possible to have a rusty revolver? Or is this just dirty? We're collecting all the junk. Can you have a rusty gun? I've never seen a rusty gun before. Gas, oil. Ever Google rusty AK-47? I can't say I have. Alright, come on. More cleaning solutions and poop. Apparently you can turn this on. Not that it does anything. It's just acts as a flashlight, I guess. Take the TV. I mean, I guess we can. Oh. Ooh, more gas. Over on a long drive TV. The thing is, I don't think the TV does anything besides acting as a flashlight, as a light source. It's a non-functional TV, unfortunately. Alright, I think that's enough junk on the front trunk, anyways. We can take it. I don't know, bolt it on the front of the car, maybe? I don't know. Aw, man, I can't turn the collision off. Well, there's no way I'm gonna be able to stick this on then. Because like, if I can't turn the collision off, I can't even put it anywhere. Damn it. Whatever. 37. I suppose we can refuel real quick. Met new crew at Popeyes. Got hit with, you have a degree? Why are you here? Have they not seen the job market lately? Anyone with a degree is probably struggling. Oh, more portable flashlight. And dog? Chihuahua? Made it sound like I'm not trying. You'll find a degree someday. I mean, you'll find a job with a degree someday. Alright, come on, get out of here. What's down here? That's, what the hell is that? I have no idea. Poop. You met the district manager. It's a visor, is it? Oh. Do you think this bumper goes onto the front? Right. Let's scroll down here as well. You can view and change processor affinity. You can do that in pretty much anything, by the way. System Informer also can do that. You can also save the process affinity. More revolver bullets. Too bad I don't really need it. I suppose I could keep it in my inventory. Sure. Alright, let's sleep real quick. I think the long drive should have a mechanic where you have to refill air and tires. God. I have to keep like a tire pump with us. Alright. Windows will move a running thread that could run on a different processor from one CPU to a second processor to permit a thread with an affinity for the first processor to run on the first processor. Huh? Yeah, let me reread that. Windows won't move a running thread that could run on a different processor from one CPU to a second processor to permit a thread with an affinity for the first processor to run on the first processor. This is a very confusing sentence to read. For example, consider the scenario: CPU 0 is running a priority 8 thread that can run on any processor, and CPU 1 is running a priority 4 thread that can run on any processor. A priority 6 thread that can run on only CPU 0 becomes ready. What happens? Windows won't move the priority 8 thread from CPU 0 to CPU 1, preempting the priority 4 thread so that the priority 6 thread can run. Priority 6 thread must stay in ready state. Therefore, changing the affinity mask for processor on a thread can result in threads getting less CPU time than they normally would, because Windows is restricted from running the thread on certain processors. Therefore, setting affinity should be done with extreme care. In most cases, it is optimal to let Windows decide which thread runs where. Yeah, I need to reread that paragraph in my head. CPU 0 is running a priority 8 thread that can run any processor. CPU 1 is running a priority 4 thread that can run any processor. Windows will move the priority 8 thread from CPU 0 to 1. Can result in thread getting less CPU time. Windows is restricted from running a thread on certain processors. Huh, okay. Well, I didn't know that before. Extended affinity mask. To support more than 64 processors... Oh, I had a handbrake on. To support more than 64 processors, which is the limit enforced by the original affinity mask structure, composed of 64 bits on a 64-bit system. Windows is an extended affinity mask. K-Affinity EX is an array of affinity masks, one for each supported processor group, currently defined at 20. When a scheduler needs to refer to a processor in extended affinity masks, at first dereferences the correct bit mask by using its group number and then accessing the resulting affinity directly. In the kernel API, extended affinity masks are not exposed. Instead, the caller of the API inputs the group number as a parameter and receives a legacy affinity mask for that group. In Windows API, on the other hand, only information about a single group can usually be queried, which is the group of the currently running thread, which is fixed. The extended affinity mask and its underlying functionality are also how a process can escape the boundaries of its original assigned processor group. Using the extended affinity APIs, threads in the process can choose affinity masks on other processor groups. For example, if a process has 4 threads and the machine has 256 processors, thread 1 can run on processor 4, thread 2 can run on processor 68, thread 3 can run on processor 132, thread 4 on 196. If each thread has an affinity mask of 0x10 on groups 0, 1, 2, and 3. Alternatively, the threads can each set an affinity of all 1 bits for the given group. And the process can execute its threads on any available processor on the system, with a limitation that each thread is restricted to running with its own group only. You can take advantage of extended affinity at creation time by specifying the group number in the thread attribute list, or proc thread attribute group affinity, when creating a new thread, or by calling thread group set group a thread group affinity on the existing thread. Oop, 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 oop. Come on, you got this. Okay. System affinity mask. Windows drivers usually execute in the context of calling a thread or an arbitrary thread. That is, not in the safe confines of the system process. Therefore, currently running driver code might be subject to affinity rules set by the application developer. These are not currently relevant to the driver code and might not even be correct processing of interrupts and other queued work. Driver developers therefore have a mechanism to temporarily bypass user thread affinity settings by using the KE-set system affinity thread, or KE-set system affinity thread, and KE revert to user affinity thread, or KE revert to user group affinity thread APIs. Ideal and last processor. Each thread, okay, one more fork. We'll go straight, I think. And it just occurred to me, we should probably drop down things from the way we came as well. Hello, Shiaris. Alright. Put one here. I'll put the rusty revolver here. I probably should have yoinked the headlight from the other car. I forgot about it until now. Whatever. Ideal last processor. Each thread has 3 CPU numbers stored in the kernel thread control block. We have an ideal processor. This is the preferred processor that this thread should run on. A last processor. This is the thread that the last thread ran on. Or the next processor. This is the processor that the thread will be or is already running on. The ideal processor for a thread is chosen when a thread is created using a seed in the process control block. The seed is incremented each time a thread is created, so that ideal processor for each new thread in the process rotates through the available processors on the system. For example, the first thread in the first process on the system is assigned with an ideal processor of 0, and the second thread in that process is assigned with the ideal processor of 1. However, the next process in the system has its first thread ideal processor set to 1, the second to 2, and so on. In that way, the threads within each process are spread across processors. On the SMT system or hyperthreading, the next ideal processor is selected from the next SMT set. For example, on a quad-core hyperthread system, ideal processors for threads in a certain process could be 0, 2, 4, 6, 3, 5, 7, 1, 3, etc., etc. In this way, the threads are spread evenly across physical processors. Good morning, Sergeant. Isn't it like 7 a.m. your time on Saturday? Pretty early. Good morning. Right. Note that this assumes that the thread within a process are doing an equal amount of work. This is typically not the case on a multi-thread process, which normally has one or more housekeeping threads and numerous worker threads. Therefore, a multi-thread application that wants to take full advantage of the platform might find it advantageous to specify the ideal processor numbers for its thread by using the setThread ideal processor function. To take advantage of processor groups, developers should call setThread ideal processor EX instead, which allows the selection of group numbers for the affinity. 6 a.m. Oh yeah, are you guys back to GMT? No, you guys are still GMT 1, right? So that's minus 7 hours, so 6 a.m. It is currently 1 p.m. here. In 64-bit Windows, the stride field in the K node is used to balance the assignment of newly created threads within the process. The stride is a scalar number that represents the number of affinity bits within a given NUMA node that must be skipped to attain a new independent logical processor slice, where independent means on another core, if dealing with an SMT system that is, or another package if dealing with a non-SMT but multi-core system. Because Windows doesn't support large processor configuration systems, it doesn't use a stride, but it simply selects the next processor number to try to avoid overshot. Hang on. I got work today, so rip my weekend. Ooh. 07. Hope everything goes well today at work. Alright, I might have underestimated how much junk I need. Because I think we're running out again. Because 32-bit Windows doesn't support large processor configuration systems, it doesn't use a stride. It simply selects the next processor number, trying to avoid sharing the same SMT set if possible. Ideal node. On a NUMA system, when the process is created, an ideal node for the process is selected. The first process is assigned to node 0, the second process to node 1. Then the ideal processors for the threads in the process are chosen for the process's ideal node. The ideal processor for the first thread in a process is assigned to first processor in the node. As additional threads are created in processes with the same ideal node, the next processor is used for the next thread's ideal processor, and so on. CPU sets. You've seen how affinity, sometimes referred to as hard affinity, can limit threads to certain processors, which is always honored by the scheduler. The ideal processor mechanism tries to run threads on their ideal processor, sometimes referred to as soft affinity, generally expecting to have the threads state to be part of processor's cache. The ideal processor may or may not be used. It does not. Whoa. That's what we get for running into a rock. Whoa. Could have been worse. Could have flown off into the distance. Whoa, 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 whoa. Should pull the handbrake. The ideal processor may or may not be used, and does not prevent the thread from being scheduled on other processors. We've got another fork already. Wow, okay. Time to put down more junk. Alright, what other stuff can we put down? We don't need water, do we? Okay. Unloaded the gun. We don't need another revolver. We have two already. Or we have one already in our inventory. Both of these mechanisms don't work on system-related activity, such as system threads activity. Also, there is no easy way to set the hard affinity to all processes on a system in one stroke. Even walking the process would not work. System processes are generally protected from external affinity changes because they require a process set information access right, which is not granted for protected processes. Another news, a friend of a dad works for an optic fiber company. When I got home, talked to him and I were chatting. He mentioned his son is a big fan of Linux. That him and I should talk about working for him. Well, good luck. That sounds arduous if you don't use Linux enough. Windows 10 and Server 2016 introduced a mechanism called CPU sets. These are a form of affinity that you can set for use by the system. Okay. You know, if you learn anything from this stream, it's not anything to do with Windows specifically. It's you should not read and drive at the same time, especially not in real life, preferably not in game either. Because this is what can happen. You do that in real life. Very unsafe. Take your road off the road for like, take your eyes off the road for like a second, and you'll be dead. Which is bad. You don't respawn in real life. There are a form of affinity that you can set for use by the system as a whole, including system threads activity, processes, and even individual threads. For example, a low latency audio application may want to use the processor exclusively, while the rest of the system is diverted to use other processors. CPU sets are a way to achieve that. The documented user mode API is somewhat limited at the time of writing. It gets system CPU set information, returns an array of system CPU set information that contains data for each CPU set. In the current implementation, a CPU set is equivalent to a single CPU. This means the returned array's length is the number of logical processors on the system. Each CPU set is identified by its ID, which is arbitrarily selected to be 256 plus the CPU index. These IDs are the ones that must be passed to set processor default CPU sets and set thread selected CPU sets, functions to set default CPU sets for a process, and the CPU set for a specific thread, respectively. An example for setting thread CPU set would be a quote-unquote important thread that should not be interrupted if possible. This thread could have a CPU set that contains one CPU, while setting the default process CPU to be set to include all the other CPUs. One missing function in the Windows API is the ability to reduce the system CPU set. This can be achieved by a call to anti-set system information system call. For this to succeed, the caller must have SD increased base priority privilege. I wonder if there's one now, or if it's still the same. Because like this was written back in 2017, or published back in 2017. When are we getting the next edition of Windows internals, by the way? It hasn't felt this way, but like it has been nearly a decade since the last version. Alright, I'm gonna need a cough drop real quick, so I can actually continue reading for the next hour. For some reason, whenever I'm streaming these, if I do a normal stream or talk normally, I can do that for hours. But like whenever I do these streams where I'm continuously reading, my throat gets tired like 30 minutes into it. So whenever I do these streams, I have to use my cough drop so my throat can not die. Experiment. In this experiment, you'll view and modify CPU sets and watch the resulting effects. Download CPU set.exe tool from downloadable resources. Open an admin terminal and navigate to a directory where it exists and type CPU set. It should be similar to the following. And you can run CPU stress for maximum activity. We can't really test this while we're streaming, but you can do this at home. Okay. Thread selection on multiprocessor systems. Oh, how much longer do we have for this chapter? Feels like we've been reading a threads chapter for like 3 streams, 4 streams at this rate. Pretty long. By the way, we're on to page 300 out of 801 in this PDF. 10% of which are probably unrelated, or 5%, I would say, are probably like filler pages. Now keep in mind, this is like part 1. There's a part 2. So we're not even like halfway through the book yet. Thread selection on multiprocessor systems. Before covering multiprocessor system in more detail, let's summarize the algorithm discussed earlier in the thread selection section. They either continue executing on the current thread if no new candidate was found, or started running on the idle thread if the current thread had a block. However, there's a third algorithm for thread selection called KI search for new thread, which was hinted at earlier. Well, we got another fork, guys. I'm gonna need another resting station at some point, because we're running out of stuff we can drop off. Oh, I should probably close this. Got any other junk in here that we can use? I thought we dropped something in here earlier. Oh, right, that one. Problem is I can't reach it. There we go. Alright, we need more junk. I mean, suppose we have enough revolver bullets, right? Well, my revolver bullets. Oh, that's not what I meant. 5 revolver bullets will go right. No, we'll go left. Alright, we need to collect like a dozen things next time. So we'll stop running out. The algorithm is called in one specific instance when the current thread is about to be blocked due to weight on an object. Hello, thank you for follow. I discovered you don't need to open the containers to fill the tank. Yeah. But you still need to open the caps for the gas and oil. Those are the ones that I always forget to close, which is problematic. Anyways, thank you for follow. Nope. But do I not need to do that? Hang on. Let's try that. No, by default it just drinks. I can't, like, it doesn't have the icon. I have to open it for the icon to show up. Yeah, see? Oh. Okay, just put it through the floor. Well, cool. Didn't need that. Just move really close. Ah, it's fine. I can just open the cap. It's not that difficult. This algorithm is called in one specific instance when the thread is about to block due to a wait on an object, including doing a delay execution thread, also known as sleep. Note, this shows a subtle difference between commonly used sleep call, which makes the current thread block until the next timer tick, and the switch to thread call, which was shown earlier. Now, sleep uses an algorithm about to be described, while switch to thread uses previously shown logic. Okay, search for a new thread initially checks whether there is already a thread that was selected for this processor by reading the next thread field. If so, it dispatches this thread immediately in the running state. Otherwise, it calls KS select ready thread X routine. Okay, now we got another fork. Can you stop giving me forks? I'm running out of things to drop off. It would help if you bring me back to the desert biome. Well, I guess we can drop off you. I still know who this is, by the way. Well, goodbye, bumper, again. You can mark the forks with poop. Hang on. What's the poop button again? That's a good idea. Controls. B. Okay. No, it just burps. Oh. Well, there you go. Alright. Well. Chat. Found a new way to mark forks. I hope that doesn't roll off. Yeah, I don't think normally a poop has the ability to roll like that. Not that I've rolled a cylindrical poop before. I hope no one's eating. Alright. Where were we? If so, it dispatches the threat immediately in a running state. Otherwise, the cause can select Ready Threat X routine, and if one threat is found, it performs the same steps. If no threat was found, the processor is marked as idle, even though the idle threat is not yet executing, and a scan of queues of other logical processors shared is initiated, unlike the other standard algorithms, which would now give up. If, however, the processor core is parked, the algorithm will not attempt to check other logical processors, as it is preferable to allow the core to enter a parking state instead of keeping it busy with new work. Or in these two scenarios, the work stealing loop now runs. The code looks at the current NUMA node and removes any idle processors, because they shouldn't have threads that need stealing. Then the code looks for the current CPU shared ready queue and calls KI search for new thread on processor in that loop. If no thread is found, the affinity is changed to the next group, and the function is called again. This time, however, the target CPU points to the next group's shared queue instead of the current one. Causing this processor to find the best ready thread from the other processor group's ready queue. If this fails to find a thread to run, local queues of processors in the group are searched in the same manner. Ooh. If this is unsuccessful, and if DFSS is enabled, what's DFSS again? Don't remember. A thread from the idle-only queue of the remote logical processor is released on the current processor instead, if possible. If no candidate thread, ready thread is found, the next lower number logical processor is attempted, and so on, until all our logical processors have been exhausted on the current NUMA node. In this case, the algorithm keeps searching for the next closest node, and so on, until all nodes in the current group have been exhausted. Recall that Windows allows a given thread to affinity only on a single group. If this process fails and fails to find any candidate, if this fails to find any candidates, the function returns null, and the processors enter the idle thread in the case of a wait, which will skip idle scheduling. If this work was already being done from the idle scheduler, the processor enters a sleep state. Hello. processor selection. We described how Windows picks a thread when a logical processor needs to make a selection. Okay. Or when the selection must be made for a given logical processor, and assumed the various scheduling routines have an existing database of ready thread to choose on. Now we'll see how this database gets populated in the first place. In other words, how Windows chooses LP's ready queue to associate it with a given ready thread. Having described the types of multiprocessor systems supported by Windows, as well as thread affinity and ideal processor settings, we're now ready to examine how this information is used for this purpose. There's a mark on my monitor. When we looked over, I thought it was smoke in the distance, but no, it's just a mark on my monitor. I need to clean that. Actually, let me do that real quick. Where's my cloth? Whatever, we'll use a tissue. Here. Oh, I can barely see the mark at on the control screen. Here. Okay. Is it gone now? Is it? Yeah, I think it's gone. Okay. Alright, time for pooping again. Alright, you know, for your viewing experience, I'm gonna mute this part. Because this is not pleasant to listen to. Oh, here you go. Come on, one more. This is an assault to my ear. You guys should be glad you can't hear this. Yeah, I don't think we have enough poop meter. So that might not work. Well, I guess we're back to placing this down instead. Choosing a processor for a thread where there are idle processors. That's a oddly long name for a subchapter. When a thread becomes ready to run, the KI deferred ready thread scheduler function is called. This prompts Windows to perform two tasks. 1. Adjust priorities and refresh quantums as needed. As explained in the priority boost section. Okay, that was close. Pick the best logical processor for the thread. Windows first looks up the thread's ideal processor, and then it computes the set of idle processors within the thread's hard affinity mask. Then this set is pruned as follows. 1. Any ideological processors that have been parked by the core parking mechanism are removed. See Chapter 6 on core parking. If this causes no idle processors to remain, the idle processor selection is aborted. The scheduler behaves as if no idle processors are available, described in the next section. Any ideological processors that are not on the ideal node, defined as the node containing the ideal processor, are removed, unless this would cause all idle processor to be eliminated. On the SMT system, any non-idle SMT sets are removed, even if this might cause the elimination of the ideal processor itself. In other words, Windows prioritizes a non-ideal idle set SMT over an ideal processor. Windows checks whether the ideal processor is among the remaining set of idle processors. If not, it must then find the most appropriate idle processor. To do this, it first checks whether the processor that the thread last ran on is part of the remaining idle set. If so, it considers this processor to be a temporarily ideal processor and selects it. Recall that the ideal processor attempts to maximize processor cache hits. In picking the last processor a thread ran on is a good way to do so. If the last processor is not part of the remaining idle set, Windows checks whether the current processor, that is, the processor currently executing the scheduling code, is a part of the set. If so, it applies the same logic as before. Oop, don't want to run into a tree there. If neither the last nor the current processor is idle, Windows performs one more pruning operation, removing any idle logical processors that are not on the same SMT set as the ideal processor. If there are none left, Windows instead removes any processors not on the SMT set of the current processor, unless this too eliminates all idle processors. Okay, more fork. Hey guys, can we? Hang on, there's a thing there. We're out of things to put down. How about we just not do anything for the fork? We'll come back later. We'll collect some trash. Then we'll move the set trash back to the fork. Gas. Alright. Shh. Quiet. Busy here. Oh, hello. Not you. Bye. Hi, hello person on YouTube. More trash. Cool art. Aw, they don't have headlights, really? Dang it. Put this down here. Yummy. Why is there a toilet up there? Anything interesting here? Cobweb. More Minecraft Jenny. I still don't know who the hell this is. How do I attach this? Hello? We gotta have it attached. Whatever. I think it's stuck outside, actually. I'm gonna put you over here. Technically should have gotten paid 22 hours ago after working 3 weeks. And you haven't? Nope. Well, I hope it's just something on their end. You'll get paid soon. Checking the service used by a company, it's down. Oof. Wait, how'd the freaking fridge fall? By the way, speaking of anything in the fridge. Miss PZ. I'm waiting for Build 43 to fully release. Yummy. Random meat in the non-refrigerated fridge. Do you think that's enough trash yet? No, not yet. We need more. Alright, let's waste some bullets. Got hat. Got air freshener. Got actually 3 cowboy hats. And gas. I also got the CSGO aim. You know, it's been a while since I last played CS. That's enough trash in there. The hell's this? Bread. You know, speaking of bread, tried looking for a banana bread again the other day. Still haven't found one. Been meaning to get some banana bread for a while. Local bakery doesn't do them. And oh, that's high. And a bakery near work. I thought they had them. Well, last I went there, I didn't see one. That's unfortunate. Glasses. What if you made some? Girl, I don't know how to cook, let alone bake bread. I'm gonna take this with us. It's not hard, just read the instructions. Yeah, totally. Not hard whatsoever. Ooh. Is that another Jeep? Ooh. Wait. That can go on the front of what? Huh? What is this? GB me a beetle. Oh yeah, sorry, I meant beetle. Yes. I know what a Jeep looks like. The hell is this? We got decor for our headlights now, apparently. Oh, go on there. Come on. It's got alcohol in it for some reason. Ooh, that's a lot of shotgun ammo. Well, we don't have any shotguns, so we're good. Well, I guess we'll put the bumper back on. The one rusty ass bumper. Take the headlight. Yeah, I will in the low. We just stole their license plate. Keep the extras for an inevitable crash and lose them. Alright, fine. Okay, let's drive this over. Nope. I love how one headlight like bigger than the other. Chocolate. Doesn't melt in the sun. Yeah, this is a nice door. Certainly better than this rusty ass door. Yeah. Not quite the same model, but good enough. Alright, what's in here? Emergency light, fun lights. Whatever the heck this is, I have no idea what that is. Ooh, shiny. Do you think we can get rid of... Oh, okay, we got rid of the blood. Alright, let's nap real quick. Can't unrust this. That would be nice. No, I guess not. Well, at least the insides look nice now. You know, wire brush. Jesus, you scared shit out of me. This is now a horror game. What do we have here? More oil. Okay. Not a snake. Surely not a snake. I know a snake when I see one. Do you think this will work? You have snakes in Taiwan? Yeah, of course. Oh. Well, it got rusted, kinda. It still doesn't look great, but cool. I mean, we have snakes, but it's not like you see them in urban areas. In suburbs and with a lot of trees, maybe. And grass. Alcohol, that's a lot of alcohol. We already have a bumper. Looks identical. Alright, we'll get rid of this silly looking trunk door. Matching license plate number. Here we go. We'll now give it a nice coat of paint. Maybe it doesn't work on rusted parts like that. Oh, I guess it's now brown. Reddish brown. Too bad that didn't change the color of the trunk. It still looks slightly discolored, but whatever. We have a brown Jeep, brown Beetle now. Poo colored. You know, there are better ways to describe that, but sure. Green. Well, guess we have a green beetle now. Or blue. Ooh, oh, this is nice. This is a nice blue. Hang on. Ooh. It's very blue. Okay, looks nice. You need to wash the trunk with soap. Would that work? No, I don't think it does anything. Unfortunately. Oh well. Matches your sponge? Hell yeah. Alright, one last check before we run off. What's that light? That is how lights work in real life. Yes. You can just use a light bulb like that. If you think that's not blue enough, well, watch this. Now it's really blue. Holy shit. Okay. And I've now inhaled enough fumes that I become a superhero villain. Take out flashlights and leave them at the forks. Yeah, okay, I suppose I could. Take the light bulb. I wish you could stick them on somewhere. But no. We'll put it on our butt. Alright, that's enough faffing around. Let's get back to driving. Alright. In other words, Windows prefers IO processors that share the same SMT as the unavailable ideal processor and or last processor it would like to pick in the first place, because SMT implementations share the cache on the core. This has nearly the same effect as picking the ideal or last processor from a caching perspective. Ooh, okay. If after the previous step more than one processor remains in the idle set, Windows picks the lowest number processor as the thread's current processor. After a processor has been selected for the thread to run on, the thread is put... well, whatever. Ooh. Good? Very good. We'll close the window so no things fly out. If after the previous step more than one processor remains in the idle set, Windows picks the lowest number of processor as the thread's current processor. After a processor has been selected for a thread to run on, the thread is put in the standby state, and the idle processor's PRCB is updated to point into this thread. If the processor is idle but not halted, a DPC interrupt is sent so that the processor handles the scheduling operation immediately. Whenever such a scheduling operation is initiated, KI check for the thread dispatch is called. It detects that a new thread has been scheduled on the processor and causes an immediate context switch if possible, as well as notifying auto boost of the switch and delivering pending APCs. Alternatively, if no thread is pending, it causes a DPC interrupt to be sent. Bye. Apparently running him over didn't work, so... Alright. Oil. What do we have in here? Don't fall in there, please. Gas. And one benefit of having a color like this is that it's pretty obvious. Nearly put the wrong thing there. Okay, we have 100% oil still. More gas, please. Number 1. You're a winner. Cool bumper. I mean, doesn't quite look right, but nah. Okay. Choosing a processor for a thread when there are no idle processors. If there are no idle processors when a thread wants to run, or if only idle processors were eliminated by first pruning, which got rid of parked idle processors, Windows first checks whether the latter situation has occurred. In this scenario, the scheduler calls KI select candidate processor. Task. Ooh, nice flip. Task the core parking engine for the best candidate processor. The core parking engine selects the highest numbered processor that is unparked within the ideal node. If there are no such processors, the engine forcefully overrides the park state of the ideal processor and causes it to be unparked. Upon returning to the scheduler, it checks whether the candidate received is idle. If so, it picks the processor for the thread, following the same steps as the previous scenario. If this fails, Windows must decide whether to preempt the currently running thread. First, a target processor needs to be selected. The preference is in order of precedence. The ideal processor of the thread, the last processor the thread ran on, the first available processor in the current NUMA node, the closest processor on another NUMA node, and all these barring affinity constraints, if any. After processor is selected, the next question is whether the thread should preempt the current one on that processor. This is done by comparing the ranks of the two threads. This is an internal scheduling number that indicates the relative power of a thread based on its scheduling group and other factors. Oh, we are on to the this part of the soundtrack. I hope I don't get copyright claimed. This internal see section group-based scheduling layer in this chapter for detailed discussion of group scheduling and rank. One benefit of having a light bulb in here is I can actually see in the interiors. Yeah. If the rank of the new threat is 0, highest, or lower than the current threat's rank, or the ranks are equal but the priority of the new threat is higher than the currently executing one, then preemption should occur. Yeah, I'm gonna pause. Ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah. Witch Doctor is a classic. Ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah. If the rank of the new threat is 0, highest or lower than the current threat's rank, or okay, yeah, the currently running threat is marked to be preempted, and Windows queues a DPC interrupt to the target processor to preempt the currently running thread in favor of this new threat. Ooh. If the reply thread cannot be run right away, it is moved into ready state on the shared or local queue, as appropriate based on the affinity constraints, or await its turn to run. As seen in the scheduling scenarios earlier, the thread will be inserted either at the head or the tail of the queue, based on whether it entered the ready state due to preemption. Note that regardless of the underlying scenario and various possibilities. Whoa. Okay, no part flew off. That's surprising. Threads are mostly put on their ideal processors per processor ready queues, guarantee the consistency of the algorithms that determine how a logical processor picks a thread to run. Heterogeneous scheduling, a big little. Anything here? I should probably keep talking because then this is gonna get copyright claimed if I don't. Gas. Gas. Okay, I should probably skip this part actually. What is this goofy music? Orange paint. Bread. Yummy. We're waiting for Bill 42. Sure am. Oh, nice door. Well, there's a whole lot of nothing up here. Cool. Oh, I can get on this. Ooh. I don't know why I would, but I can. How do I get down? Okay. That worked somehow. Okay. The kernel assumes on a SMP system, as previously described. However, some ARM-based processors contains multiple cores that are not the same. A typical ARM CPU, for example, from Qualcomm, contains some powerful cores, which should run for a short period of time and consumes more energy, and a set of weaker cores, which can run for longer periods of time and consume less energy. This is sometimes called big little. Windows 10 introduced the ability to distinguish between these cores and schedule threads based on the core sizes and policy, including foreground status of the thread, its priority, and its expected runtime. Windows initializes the set of processors when the power manager is initialized by calling the pop initialize hetero processors. And processors are hot added to the system. The function allows the simulation of hetero system. For example, for testing purposes, by adding keys under the registry key under K group, as follows. First of all, a key should use 2 decimal digits to identify a processor's group number. Recall that each group must hold at most 64 processors. For example, 0, 0 being the first group, 0, 1 being the second, etc. On most systems, one group will suffice. Each key should contain a D-word value named small processor mask, that is a mask of processors that should be considered small. For example, if the value is 3, the first 2 bits are on, and the group has 6 total processors. That will mean processors 0 and 1, 3 equals 1 or 2, are small, while the other 4 processors are big. This is essentially the same as a fading mask. The kernel has several policy options that can be tweaked when dealing with hetero systems, stored in global variables. Table 4-5 shows some of these variables and their meaning. So we got KI hetero system, which means is the system heterogeneous. Hang on. Poop. There we go. Pop hetero system, which means the system's hetero type. So we've got 0, which is non, 1 is simulated, and 2 efficiency class, and 3 as a favorite core. Your default is none. BPM hetero policy, which is the scheduling policy. We've got non, manual, small only, large only, and dynamic. By default, it is dynamic. KI dynamic hetero CPU policy mask determines what is considered in assessing whether a thread is important. Ooh. Okay. There's also KI default dynamic hetero CPU policy, which is the behavior of the dynamic hetero policy, which is all larger idle, smaller idle, dynamic, which uses priority and other metrics to decide, or bias small, uses priority or other metrics but prefer small, or bias large. By default, it's small. There's also KI dynamic hetero CPU policy important. Policy for a dynamic thread that is determined that is deemed important. See possible values above. Same value that is above then. Large or idle. And there's also important short. Policy for a dynamic thread that is deemed important but run for a short period of time, which is small. There's also KI dynamic CPU policy expected runtime. A runtime value that is considered heavy, which is 550 to 100 milliseconds. So what that will be 5 seconds, 5.2 seconds or something. KI dynamic hetero CPU policy important priority. Priority above which threads are considered important and priority based dynamic policy is chosen. There's 8. Dynamic policy, referred to table 4-5, must be translated to an importance value based on KI dynamic hetero policy mask and the thread state. This is done by the KI convert dynamic hetero policy function, which checks in order the foreground state of the thread, its priority relative to the KI dynamic hetero CPU policy important priority, and its expected runtime. If the thread is deemed important, if the running time is the determined factor, then it could be short as well. The important related policy is used for scheduling decisions. In table 4-5, this will be KI dynamic hetero CPU policy important short, or KI dynamic hetero CPU policy important. Okay, so now we have group-based scheduling. In the previous section, described the standard thread-based scheduling implementation of Windows. On the right. Mom was telling me she thinks brother's working in restaurants again because he brings leftovers. I guess he doesn't talk about his work. Since its appearance in the first release of Windows NT, with scalability improvements to each subsequent release, it has reliably served general users and server scenarios. However, because thread-based scheduling attempts to fairly share the processor or processors only among competing threads of the same priority, it does not account for higher level requirements such as the distribution of threads to users. and the potential for certain users to benefit from more overall CPU time at the expense of other users. This is problematic in terminal service environments in which dozens of users compete for CPU time. If only thread-based scheduling is used, a single high-priority thread from a given user has the potential to starve threads from all users on the machine. Windows 8 and Server 2012 introduced a group-based scheduling mechanism built around the concept of scheduling group, which has a case scheduling group. A scheduling group maintains a policy, scheduling parameters described currently, and a list of kernel scheduling control blocks, or KSCBs. One per processor that are a part of the scheduling group. The flip side is that a thread points to a scheduling group it belongs to. If that pointer is null, it means that the thread is outside any scheduling group's control. Figure 4-19 shows the structure of the scheduling group. In this figure, threads T1, T2, T3 belong to the scheduling group, while thread T4 does not. Owl City, what's Adam up to these days? I haven't listened to anything from him in a while. Here are some terms related to group scheduling. Generation. This is the amount of time over which to track CPU usage. There's also quota. This is the amount of CPU usage allowed to a group per generation. Over quota. I haven't listened to any. This is like early 2010s for songs. Who needs enemies? Right, okay. Thought he was laying fiber optic, but I guess not. He asked how much I was making at Popeyes, saying he can offer me $10 an hour at this fancy restaurant for less work. Is it really a fancy restaurant if they're paying the same wage as like a regular fast food restaurant? Steakhouse? Oh. Wait, this is the relative importance of group between 1 and 9, where the default is 5. Fair share scheduling. With this type of scheduling, idle cycles can be given to threads that are over quota if no under quota threads want to run. Oh wait, I forgot to finish the quota part. This is the amount of CPU usage allowed to a group per generation. Over quota means the group has used up all of its budget. Under quota means the group has not used its full budget. The KCB structure contains CPU-related information such as follows. Cycle usage for this generation. Long-term average cycle usage. So that burst of thread activity can be distinguished from a true hog. Gonna stay bed, tab, do out bed. Alright, good night, blank. Control flags, such as hard capping, which means that oh, our eyelash flew off. And apparently we're missing one eyelash already, dang. Control flags such as hard capping, which means that even if CPU time is available above the assigned quota, it will not be used to give thread extra CPU time. Ready queues. Based on the standard priorities, 0 to 15, because real-time threads are never part of the scheduling group. Important parameter maintained by the scheduling group is called rank, which can be considered a scheduling priority of the entire group of threads. A rank with the value of 0 is the highest. A higher rank number means this group has used more CPU time and so is less likely to get more CPU time. We're running into another fork. Alright, at the very least, these are forks we haven't run into yet. Come on. That is one large poop. Here we go. Oh, no, wait, it should be on the... Hey. Stay on the road. Thank you. Rank always trumps priority. This means that given two threads with different ranks, the lower value rank is preferred, regardless of priority. Equal rank threads are compared based on priority. The rank is adjusted periodically as cycle usage increases. Rank 0 is the highest, so it always wings out against a higher number rank. And is implicit for some threads. This can include one of the following. First, the thread is not in any scheduling group, quote-unquote normal threads, or underquota threads, or real-time priority threads, 16 to 31, or thread executing at RQL APC level, or 1, within the kernel critical or guard region. See Chapter 8 in Part 2 for more on APCs and regions. And various scheduling choices, for example, T at quantum end, the decision of which thread to schedule next accounts for the scheduling group, if any, of the current and ready threads. If a scheduling group exists, the lowest value rank wins out, followed by priority, if ranks are equal, followed by the first arriving thread, if priorities are equals, round robin at quantum end. Next, we've got dynamic fair share scheduling. Dynamic fair share scheduling, or DFSS, we saw that earlier, didn't we? Is a mechanism that can be used to fairly distribute CPU time among sessions running on a machine. It prevents one session from potentially monopolizing the CPU if some threads running under that session have a relatively high priority and run a lot. Can't believe you've got monopolizing in the threads world on Windows now. That's a term to use. It's enabled by default on a Windows Server system that has a remote desktop role. However, it can be configured on any system, client or server. Its implementation is based on group scheduling described in the previous section. During the very last part of the system initialization, as the registry software hive is initialized by SMSS.exe, the process manager initiates the final post-boot initialization in PS boot phase complete, which calls PSP is DFSS enabled. Here the system decides which of the two CPU quota mechanism, DFSS or legacy, will be employed. For DFSS to be enabled, the enabled CPU quota registry value must be set to a non-zero value in both of the quota keys. The first of these is under the policy session manager quota system for the policy-based settings. The second is in the session manager quota system under the system key. This determines whether the system supports the functionality, which by default is set to true on Windows Server, with the remote desktop role. If DSSS is enabled, the PS CPU fair share enabled global variable is set to true, which makes all threads belong to scheduling groups, except session 0 processes. DFSS configuration parameters are read from the aforementioned key by a call to PSB read DFSS configuration values and stored in global variables. These keys are monitored by the system. If modified, the notification callback calls the PSB read DFSS configuration values again to update the configuration values. Table 4-6 shows the values and their meaning. So we've got DFSS short-term sharing MS, which is the time it takes for group rank to increase within the generation cycle. By default, that's 30 milliseconds. Or DFSS long-term sharing MS. Okay, another fork. And surprisingly, we haven't run into overlapping forks yet. Thankfully, forks have been too, because that has happened before. And there's DFSS generation length. DFSS generation length in the milliseconds, which is the generation time over which to track CPU usage, which is normally 600 milliseconds. And there's DFSS long-term fraction, 1024. The value used in a formula for exponential moving average used for long-term cycles computation. You don't normally see numbers in a basic value name. After DFS is enabled, whenever a new session is created, other than session 0, MI session object create allocates a scheduling group associated within the session with a budget with the default weight of 5, which is the middle ground between the minimum 1 and the maximum of 9. A scheduling group manages either DFSS or CPU rate control. See the next section. Information based on a policy structure, case scheduling group policy, that is part of a scheduling group. The type member indicates whether it's configured for DFSS. Weight base is equals 0 or rate control. Rate control equals 1. MI session object create calls KE insert scheduling group to insert the scheduling group into a global system list, maintained in the global variable KI scheduling group list. Needed for weight recalculation if processors are hot added. The resulting scheduling group is also pointed by the session object structure for a particular session. Another fork. Alright. Sorry, I forgot to mute there. Sorry, I had to assault your ears. Alright, experiment, DFS in action. In this experiment, you'll configure a system to use DFS and watch it do its thing. Add the registry key and values described earlier in this section to enable DFSS. To make sure DFSS is active, open a live kernel debug session and inspect the value of PS CPU fair share enabled by issuing a following command. A value of 1 indicates DFSS is active. So the command is db exclamation mark PS CPU fair share enabled L1. What does L1 mean? line 1. In the debugger, look at the current thread. It should be one of the threads running WinDebug. Notice that the thread is part of a scheduling group, and that its KCP is not null because the thread was running at the time of the display. Enter a DT command to view the scheduling group. So we got DT __ K scheduling _ group. Okay. Come on, stop popping off, headlight. Got work to do. Is that the,
Begin.
yeah, hexagon. I recognize those nodes anywhere. And then you create another local user on the machine, run CPU stress in the current session, make a few threads run at maximum activity, but not enough to overwhelm the system. For example, the following image shows 2 threads running at maximum activity on a 3-processor virtual machine. This music is distracting me. This is a banger. And then you can switch user, select and log on to another user created. Run CPU stress again, making the same number of threads with maximum activity. For the CPU stress process, open the process menu, choose priority class, and select high to change the priority class. Without the FSS, maybe right round. Without the FSS, the higher priority process should consume most of the CPU because there are 4 threads competing for the 3 processors. One of these will lose out, and it should be from lower priority process. Open Processor Explorer, double click on the CPU stress process, and select Performance Graph tab. Place both windows side by side. You should see that the CPU consumed roughly evenly between processes, even though their priorities are not the same. Disable DFSS and then try again to see a difference. Ow. CPU rate limits. A DFS works by automatically placing new threads inside session scheduling group. This is fine for a terminal service scenario, but is not good enough for general mechanism to limit CPU time of threads or processes. The scheduling group infrastructure can be used in a more granular fashion by using a job object. Recall from Chapter 3 that a job can manage 1 or more processes. One of the limitations you can place on a job is CPU rate control, which you do by calling setInformation.job object. With job object CPU rate control information as the job information class, and a structure of type job object CPU rate control information containing the actual control data. A structure contains a set of flags that enable you to apply one of the 3 settings to limit CPU time. So we've got CPU rate. This value can be between 1 to 10,000 and represent a percentage multiplied by 100. For example, for 40%, the value should be 4,000. Weight-based. This value can be between 1 and 9 relative to the weight of other jobs. DFSS is configured with this setting. A maximum and minimum and maximum CPU rates. These values are specified similarly to the first option. When the threads in a job reach a maximum percentage specified in measuring interval, 600 milliseconds by default, they cannot get any more CPU time until next interval begins. You can use the control flag to specify whether to use hard capping to enforce the limit even if there are a spare CPU time available. The next result of setting these limits is to place all threads from all processes that are in the job in a new scheduling group and configuring the group as specified. Experiment. In this experiment, you'll look at CPU rate limit using a job object. It's best to perform this experiment on a virtual machine and attach its kernel rather than using a local kernel because of a debugger bug at the time of writing. First of all, we can run CPU stress on a test VM, configure free threads to consume about 50% of CPU time. For example, on an 8-processor system, activate 4 threads that run at maximum activity level. Open Process Explorer, find the CPU stress instance. Ooh, okay, fork again. How's this bloody already? Well, we don't have a cleaning agent, so not much we can do there. Right? Yeah, I don't think we've got a cleaning solution with us right now. Alright, download the CPU limit tool. This is a sample tool that allows you to limit the CPU usage of a single process through hard capping. Huh. Oh, so use a job to limit the CPU time. Okay. Okay, how much progress have we made today? I want to say like 20 pages or so. It's not bad, I think. I think I'm gonna drive a little bit more and then I'm gonna call it. I'm getting a little tired. Well, like lunch, actually. It's like 2:40 right now. I think we'll drive to the next landmark we see. Unless we don't see one in the next 10 minutes. Which is possible. I'll probably run into more fork before that. I keep thinking the dot in... Oh, okay. Towards the center is a mark on my screen, but no, it's just lens flare. Not even a real lens flare, by the way. Because like it's like not moving at all, it's just statically on the screen. Nope. Come on. Landmark. And a truck, apparently. Alright, let's investigate. No, turn off, thank you. More junk. Cool. Yummy. Hi, what's up? Bye. I was thinking I get hot pot after a stream. That'd be nice. It's been a while since I had some. I was thinking shaba shaba. Hot pot would be nice. Maybe it hasn't been that long. It's been like, I want to say a month or two. Gas. Is that darker blue? Maybe. Coffin with nothing inside. Whatever that is. Sure. And foot. In the water. And a brush. Oh, wait. Okay, I actually threw it somewhere. Oh. Okay. Let's find someone to read. Since when did Cabbage get a new avatar? Well, I never noticed Cabbage got a rebrand. Huh. Who do I raid? Oh man, the cat is still not there. Come on, it's daytime. Alright. Well, I don't really have a close friend I want to raid. So, the usual then. I'll see you guys actually later tonight, because we still got Xenosaga to catch up on. You know, the stream that I was supposed to do on Thursday. Yeah. Well, I'll see you guys in about... when did I schedule it for? 10:30. So that would be 8 hours from now. Alright. I'll see you guys later. Good night. Good evening. Good morning, wherever you are. Bye-bye.